Vice Chair of the Board of DWB, Diplomats Without Borders, and I'm a member of the LAC Regional Group of Diplomats Without Borders. I'm also the President and CEO of the Brazil Foundation. Each of the regional groups of DWB pursues our mission by seeking partnerships with key regional actors, and we're grateful for a partnership with CARICOM, which was launched last fall here in New York to develop training and webinar series engaging diplomatic corps from CARICOM member states. And on behalf of DWB, I wish to sincerely thank the Caribbean Policy Consortium for our collaboration today on such a timely and urgent issue. Haiti in crisis, the way forward. Our DWB board member, Dr. Eddie Green, asked me to say a few words about our organization this morning. Founded in 2022, DWB provides the services of experienced and impartial former diplomats, supported by relevant experts, to strengthen conflict prevention and resolution capacities, offer advice, training, and provide a platform for dialogue worldwide. We offer a diverse pool of over 95 seasoned former diplomats who offer their services on a low-profile, pro bono basis to civil society, governments, diplomats, the private sector, and education institutions around the globe. We engage the public at large as well through online discussions such as ours today about specific challenges to the prevention and/or resolution of conflict. Turning to the situation of Haiti, the instability that was sparked by the assassination of the president in 2021, as we know, deepened a constitutional crisis and led to explosions in gang violence. Concerned international actors, including Caribbean governments and the United Nations, have sought to contain the violence in order to guarantee peaceful elections later this year. Diplomats Without Borders is so grateful to our honorable speakers today. We are certain to receive enlightenment from them as to charting a way forward. And I would like to thank you all again for being with us. And I will hand it over to Professor Anthony Bryan, a moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome.
You're frozen.
Our speaker is frozen.
Tony?
Eddie, would you like to go forward and introduce the panelists?
You're, good morning. It seems like our moderator has been frozen. And what I want to do is, instead of my introducing the panelists, I would like to ask the panelists, when they come to speak, could you please introduce yourselves? The first speaker would be Honorable Prime Minister Christie. And I would say that he has been an outstanding leader of the Caribbean and a member of the Eminent Persons Panel of CARICOM to Haiti. But I will stop there and allow you, Prime Minister Christie, to further elaborate on your bio.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. My name is Perry Christie, and I have been Prime Minister of the Bahamas for 2 non-consecutive terms. The first, 2002, the second began in 2012. I've had the privilege of working during my tenure with Prime Minister P.J. Patterson in Haiti during the Aristide administration, and therefore having worked with friends and allies of Haiti to that conclusion that took place, much to our own surprise, and ultimately we assisted President Aristide in getting out of the Central African Republic and going to South Africa prior to coming back into Haiti. So I've had some experience before. I have considerable experience, of course, as Prime Minister in the region. I want to begin by saying that Haiti has been mired in a multi-dimensional crisis: political, security, socioeconomic, humanitarian, which has deepened since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, and has now reached catastrophic proportions. Statistics may provide a sense of the gravity of the crisis. 95% of the capital controlled by armed gangs, where they implement their own rule and with increasing fear that the capital could even fall. Over 1 million persons, including 500,000 children, internally displaced, with over 63,000 in the capital in recent weeks. Over 5,000 persons killed in horrific gang violence in 2024, 700 kidnappings, and 50% of the population is faced with food insecurity. The financial resources available do not meet the required humanitarian relief needs, which are increasing. However, more than anything else is the fact that you can really truly articulate the fear, the empowerment, the despair, the anger coursing through the population that is starting to believe that the government is unable and incapable of being able to provide the security, the relief. And so the question I ask right from the outset is, can you see how elections can be held in Haiti before the end of the year, given this extensive violence? And it has been suggested before by some that an election can take place, but leaving out those areas that are subjected to violence. The difficulty of that would be is that there are two areas of the Western Division, which includes Port-au-Prince, and the Artibonite region, which together amounts to 50% of the population. And therefore, it is inconceivable that one could contemplate elections in those circumstances. Nevertheless, following the felicitation of the CARICOM Eminent Persons Group, a political agreement addressing the political crisis was reached in Jamaica on March 11, 2024, among the Haitian stakeholders under the political umbrella of CARICOM and Haiti's major international partners, namely Canada, France, United States. It led to the establishment of a transitional presidential council. And this council was bolstered by the signature of stakeholders who signed an agreement referred to as the 3rd of April Political Accord. The great challenge today is that there is disenchantment between the stakeholders and the council. And this disenchantment affects the governance of Haiti. It affects the credibility of the presidential council. It saps the confidence of the people in the workings of the council, and therefore poses a great difficulty to the smooth functioning of governance. We've also had the disruption of a change of prime ministers from Gary Conille to the current prime minister, again brought about by the council, whose terms of reference and whose position on the matter was this was to serve the best interests of Haiti at the time. In the meantime, the violence continues, and the question for us is, how do we go about solving this issue of security, solving the issue of stability, to enable Haiti by the own agreed schedule to proceed with a referendum, to proceed with constitutional improvements, to ultimately proceed with general elections before the end of the year. The great difficulty for us is we have constantly over near 2 years met with stakeholders, met with the church, met with civil society, met with the academia. We've had extensive meetings, all with a view to trying to have the inclusiveness that is necessary for an efficiently functioning governance in the country. We've met with prime ministers, and we have met with individual members of the council, and we have had some difficulties. One of the major difficulties that arose in the functioning of the council was the challenge of 3 accused councillors being accused of acts of corruption. And we, for ourselves, the EPG, recognizes in our own countries the presumption of innocence. But notwithstanding that, and we recognize that was being articulated by stakeholders initially that people must be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And we endeavored our best, recognizing that we were not there to dictate or to instruct, but simply to facilitate. We were facilitators, and therefore every effort we made was to try to reach a consensus. And let me just speak to consensus. In the absence of a constitution, the Presidential Council was designed by the actors in Haiti and their friends of Haiti to enable the country to move forward with a presidential council that included rotating presidency. So truly consistent with involving as many people as possible in the governance. It was designed to ensure that there would be a rotating presidency, and the members of the council will have an opportunity to serve for the months that were there as president of Haiti. The new president now, Fritz Jean, we met with yesterday and had a very reasonable, productive discussion with him. So again, this presidency was plunged into challenges when a major discussion took place amongst stakeholders as to how to deal with the accused 3 councillors. They have been unable to bring any resolution to this matter, and the 3 accused councillors remain, and to that extent, whatever level of diminishing of credibility is taking place, it is really there. They have not been able to move. The stakeholders who even, some of them requested the stepping down, even temporarily, of the persons they nominated, only to find that they were unable to effect that. So the council continues with the new president, with Haiti faced with the major issues that I described at my opening. The question, therefore, is, how do we go about resolving this issue? There is absolutely no doubt in our meetings, even with the commander of the forces that came in from Kenya. He indicated very optimistically that they were able to attack gangs, push back the gangs, but because they had not insufficient numbers, they were unable to hold the territory once taken. And so he thought that a further 1,500 boots on the ground would enable the forces, together with the Haitian forces, to, in fact, have a very good chance of being able to bring the level of stability and security to Haiti, where displaced people can go back to their homes and where the country can be stabilized by those forces. Whatever the number is, it is very clear that Haiti must now depend on two things. One, the ability of the Haitian government to produce personnel for the army and for the police force. We note that in a very recent, I think the 29th of March, the Minister of Defense has indicated an intention of the Haitian government to spend $59 million in improving the military capacity of Haiti, to recruiting 1,000 members for the army, and to build a base capable of training those 1,000. Clearly, that is a wonderful development where Haiti continues on its own to produce persons for the police force and the army towards assisting in bringing about the necessary stability. The further challenge for us has been the question of putting in place the organs for democratic functioning. And in this regard, there has been some progress insofar as the Haitian government has been able to put in place the Provisional Electoral Council, and the council has been able to identify and recruit staff, and even down to the local government, which all are necessary for there to be functioning capacity to deal with a referendum and to deal with general elections. But the challenge remains in the circumstances that we face, where thousands of people are displaced, where there's bewilderment and horrific experience, particularly of families who watch their children being scarred for life. And it is so fundamental to our region and to the world to ask the question as how long can one tolerate this abomination that exists in Haiti, in our region, where we appear to be finding it absolutely very difficult to take the necessary steps to put in place the boots on the ground, the military wherewithal to bring about some kind of formula, towards a path for peace and stability. My final point is that one of the great difficulties of politics is that politicians will get involved, as from time to time we have seen demonstrations against the government. I was advised yesterday that as we speak, arrangements are being made for demonstrations today, tomorrow, and Friday, and those demonstrations should be significant. The only concern I raise is, in a democracy, there will always be the capacity to demonstrate, the capacity to disagree. But when you have people who are losing hope, people who are challenged in terms of their own capacity to take care of their families, who have no homes to live in, who are subjected to their own children being threatened, their own lives being threatened, then at what stage do they reach a point where hopelessness becomes the order of the day? And when there is hopelessness, people turn on their own. And so these demonstrations must be watched carefully with a view to determining the extent to which people's disenchantment with the circumstances confronting them will manifest itself into a major development against the established government put in place to ensure that we move steadily to a conclusion. So bottom line is that the way forward depends to a great extent on our capacity, our friends' capacity, our neighbors' capacity, particularly the United States and Canada, to assist Haiti with the wherewithal to continue to provide the equipment, the weapons, which we were concerned with the change of government in the United States of America would stop. It hasn't to this point, but we are aware that on this issue, the American government has subjected Haiti to a policy review. The second development that we must pay attention to is Canada, the other major ally who continues to assist Haiti, is now in a general election mode, and elections to take place, and therefore focusing internally on issues that are relevant to them, including the challenges of tariff exchanges with the United States of America. So we are in this very perilous situation where Haiti is in need of help, where the government is appearing to do whatever it can with its limited resources to assist in developing a more numbers on the police force, where we know that the Kenyan commander has asked for an additional 1,500 boots on the ground. We know that CARICOM countries have held back on their promise at this stage to provide some boots on the ground. But we also believe that with the combined assistance of all of those who are in this region, the Latin American, Central American region, that we would be able to find those boots on the ground in the region, provided the necessary financial resources could be put in place. So here we are, faced with this situation, and I hope I've been able to give you some idea of the difficulties and the challenges, and we sincerely hope that on the way forward, the president indicated to us his intention to meet with stakeholders, because what Haiti is missing now is a form of unification of ideas, one voice, one purpose, recognizing the travails that people face, of being able to have those political actors, the stakeholders who nominated the council members, to bring them back into a relationship with the presidential council towards ensuring and enhancing the governance that is necessary at this stage in Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Christie, for those enlightening and very thoughtful remarks. Let us now move on to Jacqueline Charles.
Hi, good morning.
The senior correspondent at the Caribbean for the Miami Herald.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. So, yes, I cover Haiti and the Caribbean. I am of the region, actually born in Turks and Caicos, where I was just recently this week, and of Haitian descent. Prime Minister Christie basically gave you all a very good overview of where we are at this juncture. And now let me just kind of take you to the ground. As I'm speaking here with you right now, I'm also monitoring this developing situation in the country. We are watching to see if the central town of Mille, if it's going to collapse, if it's going to fall in the hands of gangs. If it does, it will show that the gangs have now extended their reach beyond the Artibonite, beyond the capital, and into central Haiti, where a lot of people have fled in the last couple of years seeking refuge. Why is Mille strategic for the gangs? It is very close to the border with the Dominican Republic. It is near a town called Belader. And about 3 weeks ago, the Dominican Republic stopped a cache of arms, including military grade, a 50 caliber military grade weapon, which is already in the hands of some gang members. But they stopped this cache that was headed to Haiti. It came from Miami. My reporting showed that it was actually part of another shipment that had been shipped out in January via New York. And now we've got a shipment coming through Miami, and it was stopped in the port of Haina by the Dominicans. And so after that, there were some arrests that were done in Haiti. What we also saw with this shipment is that it showed how the gangs were being, and the traffickers were being much more creative. They were looking for different routes. They were using this in transit, meaning the stuff comes into the DR, it gets offloaded, it gets put onto vehicles, and it's driven across the border to Haiti, basically unchecked, sometimes even under police escort. And so, when this attack happened on Monday with the town of Mille, the delegate for the town, who is the representative of the executive, said that they had been under tension for quite some time. And what sparked it was a police operation in Belader where people had been arrested. And what we saw on Monday is the gang stormed the town. They basically partly set fire to the police station, also cars in the lot, but their target was the prison itself. And in the prison, there were more than 500 individuals who were in prison there. What this shows you is how complicated the situation is, because ultimately what you saw was the gangs feeling threatened by their inability to access their arms. They want control of the border in order for them to continue to have free access so that guns and ammunition can arrive at them. I should also mention that right around the same time, the government actually had issued a communique saying that we will no longer accept this in-transit movement of goods through the Dominican Republic. They're not saying that we don't want, products out of the DR, since they are one of the largest importer to Haiti, but they wanted this in transit as a way. But they did this without sort of this foresight and thinking, what are the triggers and what's going to happen, and being prepared. And, and what we've heard now, even with this town, the delegate said that they had asked for armored vehicles from the police. They did not get any armored vehicles. The gangs had announced that they were going to attack, as they have announced all of their attacks, and the police was not prepared. And what you saw, reactionary. The town had already been under gunfire for at least 2 to 3 hours before police officers were even deployed. So you've got this going on in Mille, which I will tell you is also the home of the University Hospital of Mille, that was built by the late Paul Farmer after the Haiti earthquake. That is one of the most premier, institutions as far as hospitals, as far as cutting edge research and the care that it provides. And today, Partners in Health, which is the Boston group that is a partner to the Haitian organization, Zami La Santé, they sent out an SOS saying the world must act now, that if Mille falls, what's left of the healthcare system in Haiti will also collapse with it. They're down now to 50 patients after patients and staff who could fled on their own, on Monday. So this is in central Haiti, 50 kilometers from the capital. And what's going on in the capital, as PM Christie told you, it is surrounded. It is surrounded by gangs. They want the final, that final patch, which is Pétionville. Today, hundreds of government agencies have had to move or close. Schools cannot function. Everything is just basically paralyzed. We've talked about the police, but there are hundreds of police officers today who are homeless. They are basically living in the yard of the police headquarters with their families. And what we see here is that they are also affected by what's happening. Last week when Secretary of State Marco Rubio went to the Caribbean, and Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica was asked about the MSS mission in Haiti. Jamaica has the deputy position. There are only 31 members of CARICOM between military and police officers that are there. They have not deployed the numbers that they've said. And Holness's comments it took me back to the Bahamas when a lot of hope was put in Canada, and at the time PM Davis came out and said, well, we think that the answer is not international, but it has to be the Haitian police. And so you saw the pullback of Canada. Nobody is disputing that the Haitian police needs to be sized up, and it has to eventually be able to take the security for the country. But the question is, at this point in juncture, what is the answer? How do you address this? And when you talk to Haiti experts, what they tell you is that this plan was based more on supply as opposed to demand. The demand was military, the demand was high power, the demand was certain kinds of equipment, but instead what you saw was a police-led mission, because that's where the money was coming from. And speaking of the money, today there's only $110 million that is in the United Nations Trust Fund to support any kind of mission. That money does not include any dollars from this region. While CARICOM has been a strong advocate of this, they haven't cut a check. While the Latin Americans, we've seen the El Salvadorans doing medevac, and the Guatemalans are there doing, some security. There's been no check. What we've seen is the United States has been provided the lion's share, which is more than $600 million, even though there was $15 million they asked to be frozen to the trust fund. We have Canada, which is actually the largest funder of the trust fund of over $50 million. We have Korea that has given money. France. Some folks in the previous administration have highlighted the fact that France has not provided more money. This week, I was on another panel and I said, well, is that because also, when the Biden administration was talking about Haiti around the table, they decided to do it with just, Canada, as opposed to in the past, it was Canada, the United States, in France. The place is at a critical juncture right now. And the question is, if we have this unprecedented situation where you have a capital that is completely controlled by gangs, what do you do? What is the response? We've seen in the United States this sort of pull back. While they have unfrozen money, they haven't provided any new money. So the waivers, this was $120 million that the Biden administration provided on its way out of the door. And about a little over 40 million of that has been unfrozen. But what I'm watching right now is not just the collapse of the possible collapse of the Capitol, but even the MSS is struggling. They've had at least 2 dead. They've had some injured. We saw a report yesterday with Reuters saying that the soldiers, the police officers, are refusing to go into the armored vehicles because they're questioning the safety and them being attacked. And the Haitian police itself, they are stretched. What it's been consistent. When a territory falls in this country, the police and the MSS cannot get it back. So we've gone from abandoned territories to basically a capital on the verge of collapse, and it has the strong possibility of spreading. And then I'll just finally say this, on top of all of this, we are seeing where the Trump administration is looking to deport 500,000 Haitians back to Haiti. Where do they go? Where do you send them? People's homes have been taken over by gangs. Over 1 million people are currently displaced, 1 in 10 Haitians. People, if you're not being killed, you're being raped, you're being who uses a human shield. Kidnapping is still there. Haitians are not thinking about elections this year. I know the focus has been on that, but you talk to Haitians about elections, they don't even want to hear that conversation. And I'll stop there.
Jackie, a quick question. Has Petroville been occupied by the gangs now?
Not yet. Not yet. So what we are seeing is the brigades, these citizens brigades, that have been joining forces. And let me say this, we are going into this very dangerous territory. A couple of months ago, there were 2 massacres on the same weekend. The first massacre that everybody got, we reported about was when the elderly people were targeted by one of the gang leaders because he accused them of using witchcraft to kill his kid. But there was also another massacre in the Artibonite Valley that got very little, coverage, and I wrote about it. And to me, that massacre was so disturbing because what you had there was that you had the MSS, you had the police there, and the population then walked door to door and started targeting their neighbors and started accusing people of having a relationship with the gangs because the spaghetti woman sold spaghetti one day, because a guy played soccer one day with one of the gang members. I mean, under threat. And the police was questioning him, and they came and they pulled him out and they burned him alive. And his family watched this on video. So every time, whenever I hear the Haitian authorities talk about this marriage with the police and the population, I cringe, because now what we're seeing is in this desperation, vigilantism is increasing, and the UN has talked about the number of cases that are going up. And so, the brigades, where does it end? Who decides who is a gang member and who isn't a gang member? And we've got children 8 and 9 years old with AKs and heavy weaponry. What do you do with them? Do you burn them also? So there are serious issues here that this country is facing, but the emergency right now definitely is a capital that's on the verge of collapse, and whether or not the Haitian authorities can respond.
Thank you, Jackie. Fantastic on-the-ground observations. Let me turn now to Dr. George Fauriol. He's a longtime Haiti watcher. He's written extensively and continues to follow the developments in Haiti. George?
Thank you, Tony. Let me follow up on both Prime Minister Christie and Jackie's sobering commentary, and let me do this in two parts. I'm not quite sure that I'm adding anything new, but let me try. One, instead of maybe focusing as an indicator of the depth of the crisis in Haiti, let me actually focus back on the 3 sort of major commitments that Haiti's transitional governance structure highlighted when it came into play, if you will, in the spring of last year. There were 3 things which still remain on the table. One is a constitutional reform and a referendum. Secondly, national elections. And then thirdly, in a paradox almost, a working sort of actual security strategy that the government can pursue, not only in supporting the HNP and the military, what's left of the Haitian military, but also in terms of how to synchronize this with assistance from the international community. Let me brief comments on all 3 of them. First, on the constitutional reform process, we're talking about not a rewriting of the 1987 Constitution, but simply, in effect, an updating, if you will, to make it more workable in today's sort of Haitian political environment and the experience of the last 30-some years. Ironically, much of the review process has already been done. I think there's some general consensus among Haitian political observers, actors, academics, that this process is more or less in place. There's been support from the international community in that regard. The question now really is an operational one, which is how to operationalize this review process and actually hold a referendum in the context of an environment which is hopelessly insecure, and where there's really not that much buy-in, if you will, from the average Haitian in at the street level. This leads obviously to the second priority, which is national elections. I think it's an understatement to say that this is highly unlikely in the near future. The constitutional reform process, by the way, the calendar for that had originally been for the spring, has been postponed to the summer. Technically, national elections are still on the calendar for the fall. It's a timetable which, under present circumstances, sounds hopelessly unrealistic, but is important politically because the agreement that in fact CARICOM helped foster last spring in March actually had a timetable whose conclusion is February 2026, in which point there would be a elected national government, an elected national assembly taking up, if you will, the sort of filling in the current political vacuum. Clearly, none of this seems to be on track to happen. Alternative ideas have emerged. In fact, Prime Minister Christie mentioned one of them, which is to, in effect, kind of push aside the issue of the national referendum and then move directly towards elections, have elections sort of selectively in places throughout the country where one could actually hold them in terms of the security situation. By definition, by the time you get to places such as the central part of the country, the capital region, the southern peninsula, that would actually happen to the end, towards the end of that election sort of timetable. None of this sounds particularly practical and even realistic. So I'm rather skeptical any of this has any real chance of success. That leads me to the third priority, which is the security plan, the third priority of the Transition Council. And that allows me to transition maybe to the second theme, which is in some ways the role of the international community, and particularly of the United States. And this initially raises the following question, which sort of Jackie briefly sort of alluded to, which is what is U.S. current policy towards Haiti? The short answer, I would argue, is sort of a policy that's uneasily anchored to the maintenance of the current international security, multinational security mission, the MSS, led by Kenya, which, for all of its failings, has already been stated by others, the MSS remains the only sort of the main instrument, if you will, to address Haiti's expanding gang violence. The alternative was one that the Biden administration had been exploring, which is to transition the MSS to a more formal UN peacekeeping operation, which bring with it budgetary and operational advantages, which the MSS at this point doesn't. I think it's sort of to try to gauge where this is all going. I've sort of, in my own mind, come up with sort of three guiding principles that seem to be shaping the Trump administration's response to the crisis in Haiti. First is the idea that U.S. leadership on Haiti does not in of itself imply U.S. boots on the ground. It's already been stated by not only by the current administration, but it actually in some ways was one of the principles of the Biden administration. Tried to do all sorts of different things, but not get the U.S. directly involved on the ground with to use the expression U.S. boots. Secondly, and this was reinforced by Secretary Rubio most recently and others, the perception that the Haiti crisis is really not just a U.S. problem to address, it's a regional and to some degree global question. And that ultimately allows in some ways the United States to say, we're engaged, but what are you guys doing? And show me what you're going to do. I think this was sort of a background message to Mr. Rubio's visit with the CARICOM leaders last week. It sort of also invites the ongoing discussions that have been explored by the administration, by the Trump administration, with a variety of different countries in the hemispheres, El Salvador, even Argentina. Where this all goes, I'm not entirely sure, but sort of that's a little bit the message that's being proposed. There's a paradox, however, in this, which is the administration has been relatively silent on whether it would support a formal UN peacekeeping operation, but that ultimately is a moot point, since what appears to be the UN Secretary General's report recommending to the UN Security Council does not contain, in fact, a peacekeeping deployment. One can easily blame China or Russia for that, but in the end, it doesn't really resolve or address the security issue in Haiti, and sort of leaves open as to what is ultimately the solution. And that leads me to the third criteria, which to me may ultimately be the one that shapes the political thinking of the administration more than anything else, which is I would envision seeing Haiti as much as a foreign and security policy concern as it is a U.S. domestic policy consideration. And that's driven by immigration, border control, and drug trafficking. And that's the context within which one could perhaps envision and maybe even encourage the administration to get more engaged in Haiti. Not an easy thing to, in fact, conceive, but it sort of envisions that the solutions to Haiti's security crisis are in part shaped by how the United States views related immigration and drug trafficking questions in the Caribbean and throughout the hemisphere. And that sort of begins, if you will, to engage a different set of actors and maybe a different set of issues. Let me sort of leave it at this. Hope this was useful. Thank you.
Thank you, George. If I'm not wrong, this is the time for Q&A. And perhaps I can open the discussion by asking Prime Minister Christie, what does he envision? That is, what role can the Eminent Persons Group play at this time? What should be the priority for them?
We have always described ourselves as facilitators. And by facilitating, we have been meeting not only with stakeholders in Haiti, but also with representatives of the United States and Canada, and representatives of the French ambassador, for example, in Haiti, who represented France in such meetings. We believe that we have been able to continue to keep the stakeholders involved in the process with the hope that the elections, the referendum firstly, and the elections could take place. We know, for example, that when we agreed to the formation of the Presidential Council, the stakeholders also agreed amongst themselves to an April 3rd accord. And they have lamented the fact that the government that they nominated has not legitimized that April 3rd accord that set out conditions, etc. And one of the obviously a part of the formulae for dealing with this problem is being able to get the Presidential Council to conform with promises that would encourage the stakeholders to become more active, more involved, and more agreeable to collaborating with the process. But I come right back to this. People are hungry. People are fearful. I cannot, and I don't think any of us could describe what the conditions have resulted in how people feel about that. Again, the EPG has been able to be a safety valve to those expressions that could go beyond the domestic political manifestations, could become violent. we have been able to, I think, speak with the Americans with a view to encouraging the Americans to stay involved, to recognize the reliance of Haiti on what they are doing for Haiti, right? And just to give you an example, we thought with the change of administration, everything would stop. It hasn't. They've continued to provide some aid and some armaments, all right? We've been talking with Canada. Canada has been directly involved in assisting in training, etc. So the EPG has been that agency that the Haitian people, the Haitian stakeholders accept as one of them, and they are looking forward to the EPG even being more involved than they actually have been. And we've had on many occasions to say to them, the Haitian problem must be solved by Haitians, that we are not there to direct or instruct, but simply to assist, facilitate, and advise. And so that has made them very comfortable, because I think my final point is Haiti has been the country that moved firstly to independence, the Black country in the world that set the standard for freedom and independence. It was a hell of an experience for me to be present at the 200th anniversary with President Mbeki of South Africa, to see, okay, what that meant in reality. This is the country now that has been this signal to countries all over the world of color, where certification has come forth all the time about what meaning in Africa does Haiti represent to them. And so my feeling is that we have been asked yesterday by the president to continue to be ambassadors for Haiti in the halls of power in Washington, in Canada, in Latin America, etc. CARICOM is limited in its capacity to actually put any significant number of boots on the ground, to dedicate any resources to the fight, okay? But CARICOM can use its relationship with the rest of the region, with the Americans, with the Canadians, with the French, okay, to be able to bring home the urgency that we heard Jacqueline Charles describe. So quite frankly, we have played that role. I think we have been very effective in playing that role. The leaders of CARICOM themselves have not dropped this for one moment, that they are active, they are concerned, and they continue to discuss the way forward with Haiti, and they have renewed the EPG's mandate to stay in Haiti and try to bring about the togetherness and the inclusiveness with a view to at least saying that we have the Haitian people who have been able to bring themselves together to work in the best interests of the Haiti. But my friends, in the final analysis, we all know it's going to require resources, and those resources have to be put in place. And CARICOM and the EPG must continue to advocate for the friends of Haiti to assist in bringing those resources to bear. That is the best formula for stability, security, and the future of Haiti.
Just addressing a question, looking inward for a moment. Is there anything that political parties in Haiti can do to strengthen the presidential council to make it more effective? The question is open to everybody. Prime Minister.
Let me first very briefly say that we have been, the political parties who we've been meeting with actually constituted themselves to nominate the 9 persons who are on the presidential council, 7 of whom vote. And they were working with to make rearrangements, rotating presidency, etc. So they were actively involved. Now, many of them, faced with having to deal with the issue of one or two of their members being affected by accusations, they have been making demands for changes in the presidential council. Some of them have even gone to the point where they have asked to revert back to the Constitution, where a judge of the Court of Cassation or Supreme Court could be appointed as president, as an acting president, and in fact, he then appoints the government. The international partners didn't have any stomach for that. And so and in point of fact, not many of the stakeholders have a stomach for it. So the answer is yes. If we are able to get the political parties, and I should also make one point, we are advised that there are 200 plus political parties in Haiti. Okay, so when you ask that question, that's the point I should make to you. But those political parties that have been cooperative with us are now increasing in numbers, and there are many who are now asking for a seat at the table, to be listened to be heard, and sending in their recommendations. And so the challenge is this, that those persons who, who have been identified, who've nominated the members, they have been trying to work together, and they've had great difficulty in being able to work together. And that has been the challenge for us moving forward. So politically, if the political parties are able to get together, a great part of the challenges of Haiti will be solved.
I just want to add a couple of things. One, the majority of the quote unquote stakeholders that are part of the TPC have now pulled away. They've lost control of the individuals that they have sent in this formula. And so how do you get back that control? And I don't see them getting back that control. The 9 individuals that are there are now independent, bodies. So even when the issue of the corruption scandal involving 3 members arose, the groups that sent their members could not, they didn't have any control of the situation. When I go back to this, and I think that, I've been covering Haiti for over 20 years, and it's always 2 things: accountability and expediency. When this formula was set up, and it wasn't an alternative for the Supreme Court, because everybody keeps looking at the Constitution, but it was amended by Rene Preval, who thought that a Supreme Court judge could not really take over a transition, and the political situation in Haiti was too complicated for a judge, so he removed the judge as an option. And when this happened, when Jovenel Moïse was assassinated, the head of the Supreme Court had also died from COVID, and the court itself was it was in a mess. So anything that they would have done under previous government probably would not have been accepted by the same people who are now asking for the Supreme Court as an option. But, I remember, you had the international community that was involved, and in the name of expediency, because we want to be able to put out that press release and say, we've got this transition government going on, there was nothing put in that says, what do you do in case there's an issue of corruption? How do we handle it? Who controls the seat? Is it the stakeholders that sent the individuals? Is it the Montana group? Is it December 21st? Or is it Jacqueline Charles who's sent to go sit in the seat? So when we continue to do that and send these signals and allow, when they ask something as basic as, show me your papers, show me that you haven't been accused of corruption in your previous government. And we had the State Department saying, no, we need to move. All of this sends a message to individuals that says, oh, I'm accused of corruption. Well, you know what? I'm innocent. We don't have to move. We don't have to do anything. And with all due respect, PM Christie, I think also you guys were also kind of waiting for, you're limited. You're there to kind of be referees, but you don't have the power to move anybody off. And everybody's also kind of waiting for the U.S. Embassy or the State Department to kind of give them a sign. And I had diplomats saying, you know what, this issue just needs to go away. And I'm like, this issue is not going to go away. All corruption in Haiti is not equal. And what we've seen now is that this corruption corruption thing has now ballooned to the point where you have a transition that's hanging on a thread. And the only other comment I want to say, Perry Christie, I thought your comments was quite interesting about the current president of the Presidential Council asking you guys to stay involved, because last week, former PM Golding, who is also a member of your group, said that a previous president of the Transitional Council said that CARICOM's involvement in this was bordering on interference. And I thought when Golding said that, it explained a lot of what, I as a journalist have been seeing and been picking up in terms of this kind of distancing. I mean, I went to the CARICOM meeting and the Haitian foreign minister was not there. And the foreign ministers of CARICOM are sitting and talking about Haiti, and Haiti's not at the table discussion. So there's been this question for us in the press in terms of how involved CARICOM will continue to be, and whether or not the current transition wants CARICOM and others in the international community to continue to be involved, especially when we see the signals that are coming out of the U.S. at this point in juncture.
Would anybody care to add to that?
Tony, just if I can jump in, comment briefly on the issue of an alternative to the TPC, with both Jackie and the Prime Minister have alluded to. That scenario actually sort of reappears from time to time, and I find very worrisome. And the lack of credibility of the TPC, adding to the increasingly limited ability of the TPC to actually govern anything in Haiti, let alone security, worries me, because the alternative to the TPC, in fact, is perhaps just around the corner. And it brings into mind potential influences from the outside, which is a return, if you will, to not an kind of somewhat wobbly, unworkable 9-person transition council, but an individual sort of leadership. And I wouldn't be surprised if outside actors are actually whispering into Haitian ears that's if you will, the route to pursue. I would sort of, I don't want to overdo it here, I would call it sort of the Bukele model, if you will. And that worries me. And the fact that I keep hearing a little bit references to that from Haitian voices, some of it is out of desperation, frankly, and recognition that the TPC 12 months later is not only not credible, but hasn't really achieved anything that is measurable for the average Haitian. So I just sort of highlight that particular possibility.
Okay, George.
Taking up what Jacqueline has said, that we are aware of those stakeholders who have virtually withdrawn from the process because they have been incapable of getting a response for their requests for the person they nominated to withdraw himself from the council so that they could replace him. So we've seen that. We have seen a struggle by stakeholders to even get their members to temporarily step down to allow justice to take its course and be seen to take its course, and it hasn't happened. And we've seen other, one or two of the other stakeholders who have stayed with their person, notwithstanding the allegations, on the basis that they are supporting their man who is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. And the great challenge is all of this has an effect on the credibility of the council. I can say that it is just our hope that President Fritz Jean, who has now began his term in the rotating presidency, seems to be well aware of the urgency of trying to have meeting and restore relationships with the council. And Jacqueline is right. We found ourselves in a position where there was no, even though when one interpreted the agreement, one can logically say, if you have the power to appoint, you have the power to disappoint. And but okay, that has to be enforced. and there was no capacity to enforce it. The great difficulty is that those presidents who have continued in their presidency, they are now subjected to the view that they are tolerating this and they are not doing anything to cause the council to deal effectively with the three accused persons. And so that's where we are, where all of us who are observers to Haiti, who are friends of Haiti, who in our own countries will have a course of action to take. We are aware of the difficulties that Jacqueline has so adequately described, but we are unable to enforce, and we are unable to dictate. And we have to be sensitive to the issue that Bruce Golding, Prime Minister Golding wrote, that we are not there to interfere with the sovereignty of Haiti. There's a great sensitivity to that, and we have tried our very best to position ourselves as someone only there to assist. So to your question really is, when that answer is found, and I'm hoping that this, one only can hope that President First John will be able to find a formula to make up with those stakeholders who have abandoned the process.
Thank you very much. Just looking forward a bit, we have to admit that gang control would make it difficult to hold free and fair elections. But there'll be a time when there is going to be a need for elections. And I wonder whether it would force a recalibration of the security concerns. That is to say, instead of a police mission, we tend to look for a military mission. I got it from a reputable source that Benin was willing to provide military to Haiti, but refused to do it while it was under police force commander control. Is there a need, a hope that we can engage military rather than police at some juncture?
So I wrote the story. I broke the story about Benin, and I spoke to the foreign minister, and yes, he says that we are military and we cannot be under the leadership of police. And we forget, we're talking about two African nations, so they have their own issues there. But also the reason too, I mean, to be honest, was the issue of money. I mean, this is a police-led mission because the money was coming from INL, State Department money. The U.S. has rules about where money can go. And so that really was also kind of dictating the deployment and why we saw a lag in terms of those militaries. But I also want to say a couple of things. Everybody's been focused on the July 7th, 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. We didn't get here because of the assassination. We were already here. People were not paying attention to Haiti. But after the 2010 earthquake and the elections that were forced on Haiti, literally in the rubble, and the way those elections went down, and then followed by the elections of Jovenel Moïse, which were also had to be redone because of allegations of fraud. Elections have never solved Haiti's problems. They have always put Haiti deeper and deeper into crisis. And so, all of the issues that existed with Jovenel Moïse before he was assassinated in terms of, confidence in the system, the voting system, whether or not the same people have multiple voting cards, all of those issues are still there. And I have never heard anybody in the international, even as they're insisting on elections, talking about how are we going to address these elections and how are we going to give Haitians the confidence that they're credible, and how do you get Haitians again to believe in this democratic order? I mean, you have a generation of Haitians that they've known nothing but crises since they've come on this earth. They heard about the lights being on 24/7 during the dictatorship. They heard about baseballs being made, but they've never experienced that. So there's that fundamental issue there in terms of, in this rush for elections, what kind of elections are we talking about? And is it elections for election's sake? You have that. The gang crisis, it started as a result of the elections. They were always there, but they were trying to control, electoral blocks. And I remember having conversations with people in the UN about this, and they were like, no, it's something else, it's something else. And the human rights folks on the ground in Haiti is saying, no, this is tied to the elections. Every time you talk about elections and elections around the corner, you see this uptick in the violence. And today, if you have an election, what is there that exists that says that a gang member or affiliated with a gang would not be elected as president? There is nothing in Haitian law today that will stop that. And even these sanctions, they do not apply in Haiti. So, and finally, yes, the last elections that were held in Haiti, they were done under the UN, and they were not done with 2,500. They were not done with 3,000. They were actually done with many more bodies, and they were done with helicopters. They were done with the proper kinds of equipment. This is a country with no roads, it's mountainous terrain, and what exists on the ground today can't even take the ballots across the river, much less into a gang-controlled territory. So all of these are things that need to be addressed, but you shouldn't have military or change in force just because you want to have an election. That just takes us back to where we started with this crisis.
Jacqueline, could you answer the question of what then, in your view, are the steps that should be taken to bring relief to Haiti?
I think first and foremost, and I've been thinking about this, and I think one of the fundamental problems in this Haitian-led solution is the lack of accountability. And I don't know whose job it is and where it has to come from, but people are not being held accountable. I mean, me and my friends have been joking, saying this is the one country where people don't get canceled out. And I think the lack of accountability that we continue to see means that we keep repeating the same things over and over again. I think that's one. I think that also there needs to be a strategy that needs to stop being winging it. I've heard from the experts, because I'm no expert. They've said, okay, we need to have experts who can do operations. Today in this MSS mission, there isn't a military component that can do, a mission. I mean, thank goodness, yes, the U.S. had to get equipment out, but we've seen reporting where people have complained about, the equipment. I think that there just really needs to be a serious brainstorming conversation about this crisis and how do we get through it as opposed to what our needs are. The Biden administration asked for this to be a UN peacekeeping mission. The Kenyans supported it. The Haitians said yes. Now the UN Secretary General is saying, no, there's no peace to keep. He doesn't really like peacekeeping missions, but let's keep the status quo, and we will pay for the salaries, but we need the international community to continue to pay for it. Well, we're stuck at $110 million. So again, the question to our neighbors, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, the United States, is that if the gangs take over this capital and people continue to be on the run, are you just going to allow Haitians to perish and just turn the other way?
Tony, maybe just a brief comment. I think what the discussion highlights is maybe the confusion that has emerged in terms of what the MSS ultimately was designed to do. And I think in my own mind, the original purpose of the MSS was not to go out and fight the gangs, but the real central purpose of the MSS was to actually retrain, regroup, re-energize the Haitian National Police. And that's sort of gotten lost in the shuffle here, where everything is sort of dependent on the MSS to actually do things, if you will. And or misses also the reality of the funding and the fact that aside from the less than 1,000 Kenyans that have shown up and a sprinkle of others, the Salvadoran sort of airvac capability and so forth, none of this really adds up to what was conceived either as a sort of strike force against the gangs, which I think is not what it was intended to do, as much as a capability to train the police. One comment on the elections, I think Jackie is right. Let's not forget that the turnout of the presidential elections in the 2010, 2011, and 2015, 2016 cycle, at the presidential level, the turnout was less than 20%. In other words, most Haitians decided this wasn't either worth it or was actually too dangerous to go to the ballot box. And my concern here is that is one rushes into the electoral process with really not having cultivated the concern that most Haitians have, which is what's this for? What is this other kind of another effort to try to satisfy, if you will, international actors and go through the process to elect someone who, at the end of the day, doesn't seem to care about what has happened to us. So I think there's a real issue there. And in the meantime, I would say there is a distraction, a lack. I mean, I live here in Washington. Frankly, at this point, the distraction is overwhelming by headlines that you all know about. And as a result, Haiti kind of is lost in the shuffle. The Secretary of State does, I think, recognize the importance of Haiti and has, in his senatorial role, had a constituency that could speak to him. But at this point, I think the Haiti hasn't, if you will, risen up to the importance that it deserves.
One final point, and that is that the request of the Haitian government to the United Nations, which elicited the response that has been referred to from the Secretary General, saying that he would support a sort of keep peacing mission, which would provide greater financial and logistical support, therefore leaving the weaponry, the military armaments, to be provided by others. But he thought that there would be a major step forward, and this is still with the United Nations and the Security Council, that request. And on the basis that if logistical and financial support can be guaranteed by the United Nations, then it is just left to provide the armaments that are necessary. And so that is a current request. That is one of the, a part of a formula for progress moving forward. And so we had a meeting with a committee of the United Nations where, that is we, the EPG, last week, where we made representations towards ensuring that they gave their full support to the request of the Haitian government for logistical and financial support.
Yeah, one other issue. It seems the transitional government has promised to draft a new constitution, which is to be submitted for approval in a referendum scheduled for May. With respect to that, experts in constitutional law have argued that after almost 3 decades, the 1987 Constitution, written after the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship, needs fundamental reforms that would foster more effective governance. Anyone care to comment on that? The Constitution, the drafting of a new Constitution, what should or should not be included?
So the Provisional Electoral Council have said that we are no longer in May, that is impossible to take place in May. That's one. Number two, the media really have not been involved. I mean, the question is, how do you talk about making such a fundamental change without the ability to go to the population and to talk to the population and to get the input that's necessary? Because again, we have gotten into this crisis because people feel that a small group of individuals are making decisions for them. And is now the time to be thinking about changing a constitution? Should you be doing this when you have an elected government so that you have the buy-in and you avoid another crisis? Is the problem the Constitution, which has never fully been followed and carried out? For instance, it calls for a permanent electoral council, and it's never put in a permanent council. Jovenel Moïse was the first president since the fall of the dictatorship who had all of the ducks lined up to actually do this and did not do this. Again, I go back to to, we in the international, in our need for expediency in what we think, but you have to look at on the ground, and you have to act, and you have to balance this out. And our Haitians today, as PM Christie says, who are hungry, who are being raped, who are being violated, are they thinking about a constitution in a country where they don't even believe in their, in their elected officials? Maybe what we need to do is figure out a way to not have 200 political parties, and deal with some of these issues that are not in the Constitution, that will probably help to provide some accountability and some stability. And then you put that on the back burner. I mean, these are the questions, at least in the diaspora. This is the debate, and that's going on. But if anybody thinks that changing a new constitution in Haiti is going to get rid of the violence and is going to all of a sudden give us, the stable country and take us back to even 2010 or 2009, that's not going to happen.
I think the intention was, Jacqueline, for a referendum, which, if it would be representative of the feelings of the people of Haiti, would have in fact provided the basis for improvements as the stakeholders saw it to the Constitution. So the idea was the legal legitimacy was going to come from the people themselves endorsing or rejecting the changes put in the Constitution, and that would have been really the leading into a general election where that Constitution would have in fact be the Constitution governing the elections. From what you have said, you're saying that the Provisional Electoral Council has now determined that it's unrealistic to have to believe that they can have a referendum in May.
Yes, the president was on the radio a couple of weeks ago, and he says May is not an option. We haven't even seen a text. There's actually been no text.
The sad thing about it is that, yes, they have not published the amendments of the Constitution.
They haven't even written them. They haven't even been written. And again, before the assassination of Jovenel Moïse, there was the huge controversy, and the anti-government protest was over his desire to change the Constitution and the way in which he was going about doing this. So now, if you're talking about bringing back that same Constitution, again, I think that we just have to be careful here in terms of piling on crises upon crises upon crises. I mean, we know this is a place where, yes, people love to harp onto an issue and to blow it up, and people get elected, and they're paralyzed because of protests and opposition. But I think that everything needs to be looked on in this current environment. I just tweeted the government leased helicopter took a gunshot yesterday, was hit by a round of bullets. A police officer was struck in the arm. How do you travel this country today to go to the people and to say, we want to do a referendum on the Constitution, and here's what's going to be in it? Or are we going to go back to, we just do it and says, well, we're making a decision for you?
Well, I would simply say this in response to what you have said, that you've argued for accountability. A fundamental part of accountability is having rules in place that people agree to and governing yourselves by those rules. So that was the effort being made, to put in place rules that would be acceptable to the people of the country moving forward. Now, so but again, so we revert right back to the final point you made just now, was that we have uncontrolled violence throughout Haiti, and that unless we are able to put in place the wherewithal to deal with that, it is not realistic to talk about a referendum and elections by the end of this year or by February 2026.
All right, if I might shift to Eddie. We have about 5 minutes left. Are there some issues on the chat that we can address?
I think that I saw one issue that came up in the chat, where Ted Higgins was saying, is it possible for a united group of CARICOM representatives in the UN to carefully discuss with Russia and China representatives the need for them to agree with the rest of the Security Council that sanctioned peacekeeping missions are necessary to neutralize the gangs and establish stability in Haiti. There are a number of those, but I chose that one as one of the issues that may not have come up so far.
Excellent.
Every effort is being made by CARICOM representatives of the United Nations to ensure that CARICOM's position is properly represented to all of the members of the Security Council, including the Russians and the Chinese. And I don't think you have any doubt that we will be using the best officers we have to ensure that we are able to properly and fully represent our views to the Security Council, members of the Security Council, with particular emphasis on Russia and China.
Yes. There is one that might appeal to Jacqueline in particular, from Sonia Gill, who said, "What can be done by the international community to protect and support journalists who really, like Jackie, report what is actually happening?"
Thank you. And thank you, Sonia. Yeah, so in the last couple of weeks, what we have seen is that a number of leading media houses have been struck by armed gangs. They've set fire to these institutions. We have journalists that have had to flee. They've survived assassination attempts. And one of the first things falls is that freedom of the press, and you need the press in order to tell you what's going on. At the same time, we see the powers that be also sort of using the media as their own mouthpieces. But I'm very passionate about this issue, and I do believe that more attention needs to be paid and more support needs to be given to Haitian journalists, many of whom don't even have PPEs, protective gears. They're in danger not just from the armed gangs themselves, but even from some of these brigades, that are turning on journalists. And whereas before, like in 2004, where the gangs wanted to tell their side of the story, and we can do these motorcades to go in, now they've got social media. They're on TikTok and they have their channels, so they don't need us. And so this is definitely an issue that needs to have increased attention, and CPJ, they've highlighted it, but Haiti is today a very dangerous place for journalists to be able to do their jobs.
Thank you very much, Jackie. We are out of time, I think, and I would ask Eddie Green to bring this session to a close. And thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, Professor Bryan, and really congratulations to our panelists, as well as to Rebecca, who brought opening remarks. But I'm sure that you will agree with me, this was a very, very fruitful discussion, and that we need to have a part 2, because the panelists have raised a series of issues and have not resolved some of them, but it has given us a fair amount of food for thought about how we proceed with this Caribbean and world dilemma. What is interesting for us at Diplomats Without Borders is that we all agree, and all the panelists in general led us to the need for trying to resolve issues in this Caribbean state that relate to the mission of Diplomats Without Borders, and I'm sure the Caribbean Policy Consortium, that is attaining peace and security in Haiti. That is the bottom line. And we heard about the multidimensional crisis, which is being tackled. We learned about the role of the Eminent Persons panel, which was enunciated by Prime Minister Christie, And I want to ensure that you know, in addition to Prime Minister Christie, there is former Prime Minister Kenny Anthony and former Prime Minister Golden. And from what I know about CARICOM, this is an interesting and important flagship activity for CARICOM. And I agree with Prime Minister Christie that in fact, Haiti accepts CARICOM as part of them. And that is important for building up the scenario towards peace and security. And I want also to indicate that when Jackie and George spoke of the complications, they also pointed to the need for us to try to see how much we at Diplomats Without Borders and all of us participating can move towards a greater consolidated effort for peacekeeping in Haiti, for a solution which some say must be military, but I noticed in the chat someone vehemently objecting to military solution as a case. But there are so many other things that we could speak about, but time is the essence. And I want to thank the participants. I want to thank those who attended for your attention. And hopefully in the chat, you have made some comments, which we will take into consideration. And hopefully we will be able to follow up in a timely manner that would answer some of those issues raised in the chat. Once again, moderator, once again, panelists, thank you so much. And there are some hidden hands here that I must say thanks to. Our junior, we call them junior professionals of DBD, Jessica, who really anchored the back end of this with the direction of Leonie Rajmakers, and also the coordinator of this event, who is not shown on the screen, Ambassador Riyad Insanali. And so thank you all, and we look forward to the next. Oh, I'm glad to see that Riyad has shown up. We thank you, Riyad, for coordinating this event. And we want to let you know that on the 30th, of this month, there will be another in the series of webinars between Diplomats Without Borders and the Caribbean Policy Consortium. And it will be on the issue of multilateralism and what we do to protect our international organizations. We look forward to having you again. And once again, thank you. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. Prime
Excellent.
Minister, look forward to being in touch.
Excellent.
Prime Minister Christie, thank you very much.